O'clock, call to order. Let's start with the pledge. Ted, you want to lead us?
Sure. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Is the meeting at 6 in this room?
Yeah.
So we have a meeting at 6 in this room, which means we have a fairly tight schedule this evening, so we'll try to keep things fairly tight. Reminder that all regular meetings will begin at 5. The Select Board will meet on the following dates: Monday, April 11th and Monday, April 25th, 2022. If work sessions needed, it'll be included in the regular meeting. All meetings are held upstairs in the town hall and will be held by Zoom. Zoom information can be found on the town's website at plymouth-nh.org. Citizens wishing to be listed on the Select Board's agenda should notify Town Hall before noon the Friday before the scheduled meeting.
You blew by the approved meeting minutes.
Ooh, I did. I'll take those now after my announcements. Yeah, meeting minutes. Anybody? Motion?
I make a motion, we accept the meeting minutes from the non-public meeting on March 14th.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. So chairman's comments. I wanted to just, Alex isn't here, but I'll call out the fire department as well. We had, shortly after our last board meeting on the 14th, there was a bit of a party incident in town that was very well handled by our police department, ambulance service, and the highway department. They did a very nice job dealing with all of it, so I wanted to thank them. And then Alex called a meeting of all of the involved parties shortly afterwards to try to improve some procedure around that in the future. And I thought that was all very well handled. So thank you, fire department, highway, and police. The other thing, Chief Morrison reached out this week to ask if he could stop including the COVID numbers in his weekly report. Does anybody feel like they continue to need to see or want to see those COVID numbers weekly, or is that something we can drop off?
At this point, they're probably not terribly accurate either, like with all the at-home testing and stuff, so.
Right. And Scott and I had discussed and with Zach that if we see something earth-shattering, we certainly would report on it, and we're still monitoring it.
Right.
Looks like board consensus matches, so. All right, we have an appointment. So this is a reappointment to the planning board requested for Mike Ahern. So we have a letter from June. Subject is planning board appointment. Mike Ahern is currently a member of the planning board. Mike has been a member of the planning board in the past and was appointed a year ago to fill the remainder of a term. Over the past year, he has regularly attended and participated in the planning board meetings. Mike's current appointment ends in April 2022, and he has stated that he would like to be reappointed to the planning board for a 3-year term. However, due to a personal matter, he'll need to miss meetings for a couple of months. The planning board currently has 2 alternate members that regularly attend meetings, so an alternate can participate if Mike is not able to attend an upcoming meeting. Please consider reappointing Mike Ahern for a 3-year term from April 2022 to April 2025.
I'll make a motion that we reappoint Michael Ahern to the planning board.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right. Oh, any abstentions? Did you abstain or did you vote? Yeah. Okay. Wasn't sure. 1 abstention. All right. Purchase orders.
We'll put his reappointment paper in the signature file. There's a misnamed person on here, so,
Oh, is there?
yeah. So we'll just change, we'll change that and put the appointment paper in the signature file.
Okay. Thank you. New purchase orders. Anne is not here, but are you prepared to speak to that one?
I am, actually, she did attach a memo.
Oh, she did.
Yeah. At the meeting on March 14th, the purchase order for Highland Street Project was presented to the board in the amount of $1,293,265. Since that time, we've received a revised estimate from the state to take into consideration inflation prices. So we're going to void the original purchase order and signed agreement, and we present to you the new purchase order in the amount of $1,329,477.28. The work is for, the work to be done is from Old Ward Bridge Road to Broadway Street. And if the board approves the purchase order, Ian's asking that you move again to approve Town Manager Catherine Lowe is the signatory on the agreement and future bills on the project as the project progresses.
The only price change is because of inflation.
Yes.
When was the original PO?
At the March 14th meeting,
So it's from 2 weeks?
yeah. Well, I mean, they hadn't updated the numbers. So they sent a new, after we had the purchase order approved, we received the new paperwork with the new numbers.
I'll note, because anybody who's listening or watching doesn't see this, but the, on this, our portion, so the state covers part of this, and then the town covers part of it. Our portion is $265,895, while the state's portion is $1,063,581.82. So while this is a purchase order for effectively $1.3 million, our portion is only $265,000. Motions, anyone?
I'll make
Further
a motion to approve the purchase order, the construction on Highland Street, as stated, and make Town Manager Catherine Lowe as signatory for bills and what have you.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Good. All right, Tom, I think you're up next.
Good afternoon. I'd like to begin by introducing most of the truck committee is here. Deputy Chief Kevin Pierce, former Deputy Chief Jeremy Bonin, Lieutenant Mark McGlone, and Captain Brian Tobine. And also firefighter Tyler Driscoll was on the truck committee, which started back in August of 2021. And they evaluated 5 different manufacturers, 3 of which we provided pricing. I think you have that. And the company that they unanimously recommend, and I concur, and the deputy concurred, is Pierce Manufacturing, although they're not the lowest bid by about $12,000. But we do think they provide the best value, and I wanted to go over a few of the points that we think make the difference. One, the truck construction is all done in one location as opposed to the competitor. There's one project manager from start to finish on that truck. The cab is constructed, the rear wall of the cab is constructed of 2 layers of stainless steel, which just makes it more, in the event of a collision, it's gonna stand up better. They also Pierce builds the cab to our specification as opposed to the others who provide a generalized cab layout and you work with it. We actually provide specs, and they build it to our specs. Where do you want personnel, where do you want equipment stored, et cetera. They also have a full cab safety system, which means there's airbags and air curtains in the entire cab. Again, God forbid, in the event of a collision, you know, the firefighters would fare a lot better, as opposed to the other manufacturers who may only have airbags for the driver and the officer, and not the personnel in the back. They also have a collision avoidance system. It's a software system. The cab is a little bit larger. The primer pump, which is prone to burning out because they're normally electric, is air operated. We like that. They also included some anti-corrosion protection inside the cabinets and on the pump. In other words, they paint those areas. And that was a problem with engine 3, is a problem with the current engine 3 corrosion. The fuel tank is a little bit bigger in this truck as well. So for all of those reasons, we think that the value, although it's $12,000 higher, is there. Pierce has a great reputation. They're cornering about 60% of the market in the country right now. I think that was in your cover letter. Well-respected manufacturer, and
Have you dealt with them before?
we have not personally, but area chiefs have, like in Holderness has a Pierce. And the feedback that the committee got from the places that they visited was all very positive in terms of service and quality of the construction of the vehicle.
What's a truck have for a drivetrain?
It's a Spartan chassis.
No, I'm talking about the drivetrain.
It's an Allison
Allison transmission.
Allison transmission,
Cummins 450 is pretty
Cummins?
standard. Yeah,
450.
yeah.
Got a GVW rating.
I'm not sure what it is.
There is, but you gotta understand, it's not necessarily the same as a commercial rating. It's designed for a fire truck. It has a max rating of up to 22,000 pounds or something like that.
Carries 1,000
It's a
gallons.
1,000-gallon tank, 1,500-gallon pump. Yeah.
It's the pump you want.
Yeah. Yep. That's what we've been getting for that piece, that front line piece, 1,500 GPM.
How does the hose feed? Has it got a reel?
No, it's all hose bed, cross lays, and in the back. Yeah, that reel was getting to be more trouble than it was worth. It's great when you go to pick up 4-inch hose. That hydraulic reel was nice, but a lot to maintain.
It's kind of interesting. It has Waze also interacts with it.
Yeah, that's the software system.
Oh, yeah. And it says there's an emergency scene ahead.
Yeah.
Huh.
And
Well,
also,
it's-
other fire trucks would see that too, that we're approaching that emergency scene.
I know Waze is good for police, but now we got fire, so
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
Yeah. Collision avoidance is a good thing.
So we own it after 5 years?
Sorry?
We own it after 5 years?
Yes. Yep. You make all 5 payments, we will own it.
It looks like you came in under the estimate for town too, which is nice.
Yes.
And I see you want to reserve that just in case, lots of things could happen between now and delivery.
Right. I mean, once we sign the contract, it's pretty fixed, but in 2 weeks, the interest rates will be going up again. You
Yep.
understand, so.
Did you specify the type of tires you wanted?
No, they're pretty standard. Yeah.
Any other concerns or commentary from the truck selection committee?
I'll just add that, we spent many hours researching, like the chief said. We visited several departments with brand-new trucks this past year, and I think we provided great information for the town move forward with this.
For those listening at home, that's Chief Bonin speaking. Holderness, former Plymouth. Thank you. And anything else? Any other questions?
All sounds good.
Should we have Kathy be a signatory for the contract, or?
That's a good question, Kathy. Does that help?
Or does Ann need to sign a lease purchase? Or you do?
I do. The board does.
Okay.
It would be me.
I don't wanna be in a position where
Not with interest rates. No, I'm with you.
yeah.
Right.
I'll make a motion that we accept the proposal to purchase lease purchase the fire truck
And make
with
that
Kathy as signatory.
second.
It's like,
All right, moving second. Any discussion?
Sorry, Bill.
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Yes.
Right. Scott, I don't have you explicitly on the agenda for an emergency management update, but do you have anything?
I bounce back this week.
All right. Let's see, did I have a note for Scott? I did not. All right, new and other business. First up, Lisa Ash. Oh, she's on Zoom.
Hi.
Hi, Lisa. Do you want to talk to us about the common use form application, open air permit, and flag policy?
Sure. So Kathy and I had talked a few times about trying to figure out a flag policy from some of the issues Larry dealt with before he left. And so we probably spent about 5 hours, two of us, trying to research. They are very hard to find. A lot of them just state that town municipal buildings will post the American flag. So they didn't really get into posting different flags. And what we could gather from our research is that it seemed to be one of those things where if you drive by the common and you see a certain flag, that's how the town feels as a whole. They are supporting that. So a lot of towns decided to opt out of taking stands such as that. And then Ted came to our commission meeting last week, and what somewhat transpired is the thought of adding a section to our request, park usage request form, thinking maybe if some sort of group wants to come from 12 to 2 on a Saturday and they want to hang their flag, then we could allow that or even ask that, and the decision can be made, and then the flag just has to be taken down when the event is over. That's pretty much what we came up with at this time. We did not, I have, just so that you know too, what involved in the research is that I'm nationally in Parks and Recreation Association, and I also reached out to, that pretty much from circumferences the whole country, we all belong to it, and I also reached out to that group, that association, and asked, and it's a pretty active group. I get questions a couple times a week, and we all really try hard to answer them. And I asked who has a flag and would they mind sharing it, and just got a lot of no, good luck with that kind of thing. So we also reached out to, and most rec departments are affiliated with the town. I also added the bylaws for the common too, because I thought that was important, just to see what was put together years ago and what we tried to stick with even to this day, unless at some point this board sees it to upgrade or change any of those, and that certainly could be somewhat of a working situation over the next so many months if you wanted to change any guidelines or look at those guidelines. And again, the flag is just an option, but we certainly could take direction from the board and carry on, see what else you might want us to research.
Lisa, I remember that during the meeting, we came up with the discussion on whether or not commercial use is permitted, and we were aware of that there was at least one event per year where they have an art sale there, and whether or not that constitutes commercial use common.
So the history of the art show is that it was through the Parks and Recreation Department, and there was sales of art that happened, and there has been sales on the common. And at times I would say to Larry, what's your thoughts about that? And he said sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can't. But I mean, from what I can see on the bylaws, it's pretty strongly stated that it's not profit seeking. And these artists, I would imagine, we never asked for any kind of 501c3 or anything like that. I don't know if they made donations. I don't know any of that, but there was that. You are correct. That was allowed off and on. I'm trying to be, strict with that now and say that we can't. We have a group right now, Alex Ray and Lisa Murray, I think, that are going to come to you because they'd like to entertain the idea of doing the vegetable farmers market on the common and on part of Main Street. Of course, I explained to them right out of the starting gate, we can't even discuss it right now because it's, downtown is going to be not a good place to be this summer with all the work that's getting done. But I think at some point they would like to come to you and see if you would change that, the money being exchanged on the common.
So I think historically the art sale is actually kind of like a plus. It brings out a lot of people. Maybe it's prohibited now for the fact that it is for profit, but it's quite the draw. And I think for Local Foods Plymouth to have a market on the common and Main Street, that was actually done in the past as well, and it probably should be up for consideration. As far as the guidelines, it's not. It's current, but it could be modified.
And I think that's what I would suggest, is that we modify that to allow us to make exceptions based on discretion.
Approval of the board or something?
Or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Because right now, it's flat
Says
out
it says
no.
you can't, right?
And I think that's, a little restrictive. I don't think that we should obviously allow a car salesman to drive cars onto the common to make sales, but something like an arts or crafts event, which they held up in Lincoln commonly, they use a parking lot, but they have a lot more space on their main road than we do.
Mm-hmm.
So the common winds up being one of the few places that is got parking and is a relatively friendly environment to host it in.
Yeah.
I have a question about, so the flag thing, is that somewhere in the rules, or is it?
So on the form, it now appears.
Number two,
it is,
it's
right?
number two is the
It's a regional, non-sectarian, nonprofit events.
there was another. I'm trying to remember. Lisa did show me something that talked about a flag. I don't remember what it
But
was.
there's nothing explicit in here about a flag except now on the form.
Yeah.
If we're thinking of, I guess okaying like an event, the person can bring a flag during an event on the common. But we've had a couple of, times where we've had a flag hanging there for like a week or a month. Yeah.
Right, during Pride Month, we hang up the rainbow flag.
Which, in that case, we're talking about like a a recognized, month-long celebration.
Right.
We didn't make that up, but it is a thing. It feels to me like that sort of thing builds community, and I voted for it when we did it, so.
Right.
I think the concern, if I recall, was what if some group came that wasn't something that was representative of the town and wanted to hang their flag?
And I don't know if seeking counsel might make sense in a situation like this. Reach out to the lawyers to see if we're inconsistent with displaying flags, does that open the town up?
Yeah, we've had this discussion before, I know, and I know like the post office has, an American flag and the POW/MIA. I mean, so there is probably, more of accepted use, even on federal buildings, for different flags that, yeah, I think maybe to, consult our attorney, but also maybe make it a function of the board to consider a request for, and also Lisa as well.
Yeah, I guess for both of those things, it seems like having some method for an exception makes sense.
Yeah, but I think reaching out to our lawyer as well is key
For both things, or just for the flag?
for the flag. Let's make a
Well,
judgment.
we want to make sure we're not
call.
violating free speech,
Right.
but also not violating any statutes that may exist that prohibit us from flying certain things. Because it is town
I
property.
I would think seeking counsel would be on both sides, freedom of speech, and then, giving some people approval and others not. So that's where and a lot of towns won't touch this. So I thought that was interesting when I did most of my research. A lot of towns have chosen not to entertain any of this. So I got to think that there's something there. That's why I think maybe we might want to look into that.
All right. So, what do we want to do?
Go to the attorney,
Yep. So it's,
get some answers, and then,
Can you take that as a follow-up item to get us a response? We probably don't need to get on a call with him.
Yeah, that'd be good if we could, actually. 'Cause-
You want to get on a call with him?
Yeah, I prefer that, so we can kind of describe what we've done in the
The
past.
situation?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll set something up and I'll contact you. Put you on conference.
Probably at that point, it might as well be, call us all,
Okay.
because we can talk with the legal counsel as a
True.
public meeting. You all don't have to show up if you don't want to, but
Okay.
if we're having that conversation, I'd like to be there. Probably Lisa as
the
well.
And
Sure.
Lisa? Okay.
Sure. The only other thing I just wanted to bring to your attention, just because, I'm doing this now. At times, Larry handled certain requests. Say, for example, the Girl Scouts were going to have an activity on the common. It involved 8 of them with a couple of parents and a leader. He would just approve that. So the if applicable section for town manager and selectman chair, I added just for you all to look over and think about that as well. Oftentimes it's a party at Fox Pond Park, it's a birthday party. They didn't need to do the form, but they wanted to do the form to say they had approval. But I guess my question to the board is, if it's just smaller events as such, would you like me to continue doing what Larry did? And I shouldn't say me, I should say it's going to be Robert signing this, but would you like Robert to continue to approve those things that seem small, and give you guys the more, feed your way of these larger events that might have different parts to it that we would need the board to be on board with in terms of also the police department, and if there's fire burning permit, that kind of thing, the fire department, et cetera.
Do we actually put a number on it?
Well, I think that still should be formed, put into a conversation with the attorney initially. Even the periodic discretionary authority of approving someone's flying of a flag should be at least under consideration with the attorney.
Do you want to have birthday parties at Fox Park?
Me personally, yeah. Is that in this too?
Well, that's what Lisa's asking, right? My only concern, honestly, would be the timeliness of the board to get a signature back to you on that. I mean, I don't know how much notice you get when those requests come in, but I could imagine somebody on a Friday asking for something for Saturday, and trying to get a board signature could be a little bit of a struggle. But
maybe after a conversation though with the attorney, he can determine that that's discretionary. Let the Parks and Rec do it. That's fine with the board. Find limits of authority, I guess.
yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, we'll include that in that conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa. Grace Garvey, RFQ draft.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm used to saying good evening. And nice to be here early. So I emailed the rough draft, and I also sent some samples of things that other towns used for this solar project development proposal. And I'm just wondering if you have feedback at this point. I did get a little bit of more feedback since Friday about some of the pieces that we had put together, such as perhaps taking out the section under number 9 in section 2 about there'll be no cost for design, no cost for review, design, or consultation. And to create more of a partnership with the chosen firm to actually develop and install the project, kind of more soup to nuts. So that was one comment from Clean Energy New Hampshire.
So I'm sorry, you took that out?
I haven't taken anything out yet.
Oh, okay.
Just
Well, there's
Okay,
no
so you-
section 9. There's no 9 in
There's
this.
no number 9.
Right, but it does say that.
oh,
I was thinking of taking that out.
let me back up for a second.
Okay.
So I meant under number 8 in section 2.
Okay.
To take out the part about that we wouldn't be paying for the cost of that,
Okay.
to remove that paragraph. And one of the reasons for that is a lot of the solar firms are just super busy, and we might not get anybody to respond unless we make it, okay, we're going to work with you to develop this project, figure out what the best project would be, where it should be located, do some research, and then the firm's going to come up with the cost, and they're going to be the installer as long as the select board and the voting members of the town of Plymouth sign off on everything. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So it'd just
I
be
think the
one
wording's
firm.
correct in there.
Say it again?
I think the wording's correct in your documentation here. At
Do you
no
mean that it
cost.
covers all those things?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Although
I thought you were saying the opposite.
I was saying take out the paragraph that says, we expect the firm will provide the review, design, and consultation at no cost. Obviously, their cost would be wrapped into the ultimate installation cost of the project, if that makes sense. So we're asking them to work with us side by side as partners to do all the design, help find funding, get a cost together for us. And hopefully they will be the same firm to install.
That
So,
can't be guaranteed, though.
Right.
You know, that's, you know, it seems kind of like problematic that unless you scope out just doing the evaluation and scoping out, or, you know, putting together an RFQ that somebody could bid on to include the person that did all this work to find the right combination of site and, you know, size and,
That's how it's written at this point.
well, it's kind of a catch-22. So why would the guy do it if he lost the award ultimately?
That's why we're suggesting taking out that part and instead saying that they would be the installation firm. And I don't know if this is the correct title for this. I'm still struggling with that. Is it a request for qualification along with a request for a proposal?
well, are you asking for their qualifications to do the work, or are you asking for an actual proposal to a design plan?
So it's kind of like two-phased approach. One is, are you qualified? And number two is, if you're qualified and we interview you and we think that we could build a good working relationship, the Plymouth Energy Commission would work with that firm to do all those things. Find the right location, identify appropriate funding, appropriate size of the project, and then get a cost from them based on all those things that we've worked on to install it. That's just one approach.
It sounds like you really want an RFP.
Okay.
To me, I mean, you're going to figure out based on the responses to the RFP whether they're qualified to do it or not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that you're going to float this RFP in front of people that you've already identified as potential
Yes.
vendors or parties. So then, yeah, you really want to do an RFP.
The only problem is you don't have a location, you know, you don't have, you know, like the scope of the project. So everything is kind of, like you're hoping that somebody will lead us to an endpoint that would accommodate the right site, the right, you know, size of the array. Just seems like it's, you know, kind of hard to like put out a blanket thing. We don't know what we want, but if you're qualified and you can tell us what we want, then we might contract with you.
I think the other concern is that we might be seeking grant money for any of this, so we need to be careful about making sure the selection process is very open and rigorous, so that we don't end up disqualifying somebody.
Do you, I mean, do you think that maybe the first step, we got plenty of time, right? First step might be like to, you know, actually use or identify a grant that would actually put us in a position that we can actually, you know, do a request for how best to scope a project, pay that person whatever, you know, grant money so we can get for that, and then do an RFP for, you know, that site, this PV array, like a two-step process versus, you know, this seems like it's too much expectation wrapped up in one, you know, request.
Seems like what we're really doing is we're trying to get consulting
Yeah.
and a proposal.
Right, you're trying to get project management.
A little bit, yeah. June, have you reviewed or had any action on any of this, or are you seeing this or hearing about this for the first time as well?
No, I haven't seen what the proposal is. From what you're saying, my suggestion, my understanding of it might be you could do a quality-based selection where you basically, you know, look for a consultant and then interview who you're interested in, and then move to that proposal stage. You know, you negotiate price and that. So, but taking that approach as sort of a two-step, the quality-based selection process first, allows you to probably be eligible for other grant opportunities. You're not signing on to any contract, any money. It's like it's like an ad for a job. You put it out there with a job description, and then you interview the candidates, and then you pick the one you want, and then you negotiate what you're going to do with them, the scope and that kind of thing.
It's actually what June's describing as what the Plymouth Energy Commission did back in 2017. This is just a little more detailed, but we can scale it down and say that we're going to go from qualification to propose, to designing the project to proposals.
Yeah. I can talk to you about it after this.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it seems like it would be cleaner if we made sure that this was, either that this was clearly, we're looking for qualifications, we're looking for qualified people, and forget the details of the project for the moment, other than like, generally, this is what we're looking for, someone who's capable of doing. Like, to me, that seems cleanest, but if we want to be further down the road, then skipping this all together and going for request for proposal, but it doesn't feel like we know enough to know what the proposal is even.
And our experience in the past was that those firms were willing to work out those details with us. So just, yeah, and I think there's a lot here because we feel like there's a clock ticking.
Mm-hmm.
And so
in terms of the grant money that might be available, or the general global situation, or
all of those things.
Okay.
Construction season, getting back in front of the town at town meeting next year.
So the goal really is to have a proposal we can put in front of the town by town meeting next
Correct.
year?
With funding already identified. So that's why it feels meaty.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're looking for a request for proposal and we're not sure on what site that we want to use, could part of the request for proposal include a list of sites that we've identified that they could then comment on in their proposal?
So that is part of what's written here. It's down in section, just before section 3. The Plymouth Energy Commission is currently generating lists of funding options and a way to evaluate them, a list of town qualified lands, and a detailed list of power usages for each municipal building. And it is expected that these documents will be used during the process of collaborating with qualified firms. So
But you
we
have
are
to
now
have-
working on those right now.
You have to have those available in order to submit the request for proposal out, is what I'm saying. If you don't have those available, then you can't really move forward with an RFP.
So that's why we were going really for request for qualification.
Yeah, but what you're describing for a request for qualifications doesn't sound like what you're really looking for. You already know who you probably are gonna work with in some semblance.
We
This
know
isn't a
who,
request
we
for-
know who we're going to send it to, but we don't know who we're going to work with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but that's the part of the request for proposal is you're gonna get proposals back, which you then vet and look at for qualities that you've identified up front. And you should, in that evaluative criteria, they should be spelled out for the firms to understand how they're being evaluated, so they fill out they perform the RFP properly from their side. And what quantitative measures are you gonna have in place to evaluate their proposal?
All the things I just described, as well as cost proposals.
But they're not, you're describing them kind of in a very broad term.
Well, right, we didn't get into the details of all the qualified lands in this, but we could.
But you would have to, if you're looking for a request for qualifications, okay, who's qualified to do this job? And you get 5 people, or 5 firms. Okay, well, they've submitted their qualifications. Now you're gonna have to do another step with it, which would be an RFP, that you've identified all the lands, their descriptions. You'd have to arrange for site visits for them to look at them. And so that they can do a proposal based on facts at hand. It just seems a little too squishy, is what I'm saying. You need to have more details baked up front.
Yeah, I guess I'm not seeing that with what other towns have done. Not out of disrespect to what you're saying, Ted. What I'm seeing other towns do is, we've got an inkling of what we want to do. We have a problem we want to resolve. Are you qualified to help us out? And here are some of the parameters. And I am seeing a lot of the other, mostly requests for qualifications being sent out without a full vision of what where it's going to be, how much, how big, that it's more like, are you the firm that can work with us to identify these things? But if that's uncomfortable for this board, then
It seems like it would be beneficial to, kind of like target the scope of the project in order for them to, versus,
okay.
and maybe have the conversation with June. Maybe she can point in the right direction, or at least consult with you about.
So you would like us, so let me just be clear. You would like us to identify the entire project and then go out for, I'm just want to make sure I understand.
If you were a respondent to, this, and you probably want to know what it's being graded on, and you say, I think you ought to put the array at the transfer station. I think you ought to do 140 kilowatt, and here's the project. Well, the guy's probably very good at installation, but if you're expecting this guy to tell you that, we need to have the array, or I think if I were a developer, if I was a respondent, I'd like to know what I'm responding to as far as, scope and like more of a definitive, project that you're going forward with. And getting back to what Ted is saying, too, if I was a respondent, you should have a list of what you're looking for, or at least grading the person that's responding, because it's a little, loose as far as what you're rating a response on.
So you don't think the anticipated project tasks cover that? Number 2.
They're just too general. It's part of the problem. If you don't know the sites and you're expecting them to identify the sites, well, what I'm saying is like, give them a list of sites and their descriptions, and give them an opportunity to do a walkthrough if you're doing a proposal, so they can tell you why site A is better than site B and why they're choosing this particular site for the installation, and what reasonable power you could get out of that site with an installation.
You were going to provide that anyway, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and I can just change that paragraph. The PEC will provide the qualified firm with a list of funding options, ways to evaluate them, and a list of all town qualified lands. We could just change it to will provide. Because the idea was to send this out after we're done with those tasks. We're doing a spreadsheet of all the qualified town lands with the constraints, the features, the pros, the cons,
So is
sizes.
that what you're looking for?
Yeah, if
We're in the middle of doing that
It's a
right
lot
Information?
stronger if that's attached and not a.
Oh, we can attach it.
Yeah.
Not an after.
Right.
That's why I say there's a difference between an RFQ and an RFP. An RFQ is like, okay, who's qualified to do solar installations? And you get a bunch of people saying, I am. And then you do an RFP. This is, okay, from these people who submitted qualifications, we've determined that these 5 are really qualified, and we're going to give them the opportunity to do an RFP with us based on their qualifications. And then we put the RFP out there, we let them write the documentation. It comes back to us meaning the town, and we do the evaluation on their response versus our stated criteria. And, we always have like competitive of response. You can put whatever criteria you probably want to have in there, and then you evaluate the ones that, and you figure out who best meets it, and that's the one you meet. That's the one you work with.
I think there's one confusing thing too. Well, I mean, that would be better, yeah. But however, there's like several different ways to actually put forward, or for someone to respond to it, saying, oh, okay, we can do a power purchase agreement, or we can do an outright purchase. And not every company is capable of doing one or the other, or both. So, that might be a thing that you might be able to determine before it goes out for an RFP, that you can actually nail down the type of not the price of a power purchase agreement, but whether or not we should make, is this what we're going forward with, or an outright purchase or a lease?
I understand what you're saying.
Or get back to a consultant to tell us that, well, you really should go forward with a power purchase agreement. Now scope out, a RFP and get a response. Or there's too many variables that are pretty major. But
So why don't we work on, I think what I'm hearing you say is, I'll talk with June. We already know who's qualified. So I kind of feel like what I'm hearing is if we get more of a proposal together, then we'd do an RFP. I'm not really sure if I'm hearing that correctly, but.
That might be a valid approach. That might be a valid approach. And the only question, do you actually know who's qualified, or do you think you know who's qualified? And that's the piece that could be a little bit sticky, especially if you're eventually seeking federal money.
I think based on Clean Energy New Hampshire's support, we know who's qualified.
So that means you're not doing an RFQ.
Good. That was part of the question. Okay. Any other questions about what?
Keeping in mind, and I don't know enough about Clean Energy New Hampshire, but knowing that if Clean Energy New Hampshire is advising you on the details of the RFP, then they themselves would not be probably eligible to bid on the project.
Yeah, they're not an installer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then good.
Fair enough. And they are assisting us. We're members of their organization at this point.
Great.
Okay.
That sounds
So we'll
lovely.
come back. We'll probably come back in a couple weeks with a proposal. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Like it.
Thank you.
Neil,
Okay,
you would like to discuss the planning board requirements for review of stormwater systems.
I'm I'm concerned that there has been a lack of knowledge during the coming forward in the application process regarding stormwater systems. And there are a lot of existing systems in our town that are really antiquated, and it's becoming a serious issue. I've been informed that the planning board is working on upgrading some of their requirements, and stormwater systems will be included in that. But I'd like the select board to explore the possible process to expedite requirements for inspection reports on systems when applicants come in to make a proposal to either the planning board or zoning board, so that we actually know from a qualified professional report what's there.
Do we have the authority to?
Well, I think we may have to consult with our attorney. I'm not pushing for something tonight. The town planner might have something to say about it. And maybe the chair of the Conservation Commission might have something to say about it too.
Are you talking about review of new plans of
I would say
changing use
obviously if somebody comes in with a commercial plan that's engineered, they're going to have to adhere to state and federal regulations regarding stormwater treatment. Stormwater treatment affects drinking water and water quality in general. It has a broad effect, and it's getting worse all the time. we're in a changing environment now. And what I would like to see is the select board explore the possibility of expediting this process and getting it included, the application process where they get a sign off from the fire chief, or they get a sign off from the police chief, or they get a sign off from the Conservation Commission, or they get an inspection report on an existing system. If somebody's going to do a project, that system's going to have to be inspected. But if you already have a pre-existing system and you don't really know what's there, there might be a blueprint, but you don't know what's in the ground unless it's inspected. And it needs to be inspected by somebody who's qualified to do that. So, it's standard procedure in other communities.
Do you think it's standard procedure to do that even if nothing in the project is going to affect or is intended to affect the stormwater system?
Well, like I said, there are a lot of systems in our town that are inadequate. And maybe the construction they're going to do is not going to affect one way or the other, but changing conditions are. And I think whenever, we need to know what's there.
So right now, no one knows, no one looks at it.
Like I said, if the town planner wants to add anything, I'd be appreciative.
Yeah, June, would you like to speak to current evaluation processes and procedures around stormwater systems?
So in general, if a project comes before the planning board, the trigger for site plan review is a change of use that's deemed to be have some type of quantitative and qualitative impacts to require site plan review. So and any additions to building over a certain amount of square feet, which is actually quite small. I think it's only 100 square feet. So we do see a lot of site plan review applications. Part of the process for that is we have planning board adopts site plan review regulations. So I think that's the best place for this issue to be addressed. And when there's that threshold is crossed and they need to submit an application, there's a list of requirements that they have to submit. And that guidelines of the checklist kind of things of what you have to do to have a complete application should include the existing stormwater drainage systems that may be on site, or if it's an undeveloped site, what the existing conditions are, and then proposed future conditions. In that process, we do routinely, in the last year that I've been here, take applications, have the planning board accepts it, and then there's supposed to be a set of design guidelines in your regulations that then say, okay, you're showing us a stormwater system. Does it meet the standards that we want? Our current regulations are very minimal on those standards, and we need to update them. They haven't been updated in like 20 years or something. So that's the place to do it. And then the trigger that we usually use is then having Mike Vignali from KV Partners, our town engineer, review the plans, because he's an engineer, I'm not, and he can look at all those technical sort of details about stormwater. That's what we've done for some recent applications in the past year, and it's worked really well. So the planning board just did discuss, and Neil, I know you weren't on the board then, but Zach, I don't know if you were at the meeting or Bill, when we talked about sort of the planning board's kind of work plan for the year and projects. I mean, we've got the capital improvement plan, but one of the other big ones is subdivision and site plan review regulations. And that's where we would address these design guidelines and kind of both sets of regulations, actually. So I think I totally agree. I think the better place for the board, for the town to consider to do that is within those planning board regulations, which are, I've got some examples. Our new assistant planner, Joseph, and I have already started to kind of look at it. We just haven't gotten that step to be ready to bring it to the planning board, but we talked to the new chair, maybe doing that in April or May, as soon as we can, so.
Do changes to site plan review guidelines necessitate a vote at town meeting, or are those can be just?
They're adopted by the planning
the-
board. You have to have a public hearing and, go through a process for it, but it is adopted by the planning board, and so it kind of stays within that realm.
Good.
Does that help?
Very helpful discussion.
Yeah, so we'll get to it. It's just, and both sets of the planning board, I think one of the subdivision, I can't remember which is which, one of the subdivision and site plan review regulations, one of them was last updated, I think, in 2000, and the other in 2007. And I know what was done in 7 was pretty minimal in terms of, so it's basically they're 20 plus years old for the most part. And yes, there's a lot different standards for stormwater, both in terms of quantity and quality of the stormwater that we need to look at. So we'll get there.
I'm satisfied with that. Oh, you have a question, Ben?
You want to remain standing for the next conversation too, or wetlands applications, or just, huh?
Okay.
Bring her back.
The second point that I brought up was at our Conservation Commission meeting, a motion was passed requesting that the Zoning and Planning Board applicants would be subject to review by the Conservation Commission for potential impacts on jurisdictional wetlands. And I asked Lisa Dona to come if she wants to speak to that.
So one of the challenges we've had as a Conservation Commission is making sure that we have enough information to make sound decisions and sound recommendations. And one of the things that we have the greatest gap of knowledge in is the transition of properties from being the natural realm to being developed. And, a lot of times what happens is we find out as a Conservation Commission that lands are being developed when we hear through our representatives on the planning board that, a 300-acre lot or something has been sold and is being clear-cut in order to make a playground or something. So we would like to have a mechanism that keeps us more in the loop so that we can offer some feedback and guidance, especially as it relates to conserving town resources, natural resources, over the long term. We're not anti-development in any means. We've reviewed and okayed the principle of a lot of plans that have come before us in the past, but we find that it really helps us understand the scope and scale of what we're recommending in light of where development is occurring to have a better sense of that development. So what we used to have that worked really well was that the Conservation Commission had a checklist or an area where a developer that was impacting wetlands had to check off that they had submitted a plan to the Conservation Commission. I believe that requirement at the state level went away when they introduced the expedited process, but it can be reintroduced at the town level at the whim of the select board. So that's at least my idea of what we're looking for.
So you asking for a yay or nay on that? You have the capacity to?
Well, the Conservation Commission voted to request that the Select Board grant us this ability to have a checkbox on the permit application, basically, at the town level.
But you're not asking for approval level or disapproval?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Just
informational.
Information level only. We don't need to sign off on it, but we need to sign off that we saw it and we had a chance to give input, because that is our role, is to give input, but we need to operate in a informed environment.
So you're saying that we can't, we no longer get all those, that DES.
The Conservation Commission used to, and it doesn't anymore.
is, they made the change like that, in like Perlac as well. I mean, that we don't see like a lot of them that are just, approved like internally or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think, and you're saying that with the board's approval, we can see those?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's my understanding from the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions, because we've discussed this need with them, and they've told us, oh, yes, well, that's at the town's discretion. The state can only say, you don't have to sign off. But the town, at the level that it goes through the town boards, you absolutely have the authority for that.
All right. I don't know if we can,
I would be hesitant to vote on it without checking to figure out, to confirm our authority, but
yeah, I don't think.
conceptually, the idea that paperwork gets passed along, it certainly seems like something we'd
I
support.
kind of doubt, just because like we don't see them in Perlac either. I don't think you can probably see more, but you can get whatever wetlands permit application. Is that an issue that you're not seeing the applications that actually go out?
Correct. We're not seeing what the planning board sees when the planning board's deliberating it. We're basically hearing about it after the fact.
Well, I mean,
So I think that's the problem
could-
internally.
you could attend the planning board, and there is a conservation commission member, well, two now with Neil, right? So there's two conservation commission members.
But doesn't
on
the planning board get permit applications to them before they make
It's
an
all
appointment?
deliberated on in public.
Uh-huh.
There is a mailer. I think actually the town clerk gets the documents that are disseminated to whoever's on like a list. So like the permits, like the wetlands permits, I tend to get two, or we see one from the town and then one for Perlac. So they're designated who gets those permits, and I think it's the town clerk. So that does the sending out. So you should be, at least we'll determine the fact that our town clerk is disseminating the permits.
And can
correctly.
we request the
Suggestion would
town
be that
clerk,
we request the town clerk
disseminate to the
add
Conservation Commission?
Conservation to
They
the
may
list.
already be, actually. They should be already be, because when DES sends them out, they know who should be receiving these permits, and then the central person is generally the town clerk.
Town clerk. But it sounds like there's some disconnect that that's not happening.
So what Bill is talking about is the state level requirements of who has to be informed.
Right.
And I'm asking for a town level higher information so that we're on that list of what gets disseminated by the town clerk. For wetlands only.
Could we make a conditional approval, subject to a legal opinion?
Let's hear from June 1st.
So I just want to state that I'm not real clear what's being asked for here, because when there's wetlands impacts above a certain threshold, then the state's jurisdictions comes in. So applicants have to apply to the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. The planning board doesn't always see those. If somebody has a driveway culvert that they need to put in on a wetlands permit, or an addition to their house, or septic, or things like that, we get copies of the applications, but they don't go before the planning board. And yes, they should be going to the town clerk for dissemination to the Conservation Commission. For site plan review applications that do come before the planning board, then again, on the existing conditions plan, one of the design items is to show, where the wetlands are, and then with the plan of what the future development is, you show how that's going to be impacted. So I'm not understanding why there's a sense that the planning board isn't sharing information, because anytime we have that, it's on the plan, and we rely on the state to give that wetlands permit. So there may be a conditional approval. There was one this year that one of the conditions of approval is that the applicant has to get a wetlands permit from the state of New Hampshire. I know that they just submitted that on like March 3rd or something. I got the copy of it. So the planning board isn't saying yes to something without knowing that that permit from the state is in place when there's a threshold for that wetlands permit being needed. So I guess I'm not real clear what's being asked for. If it's within the building permit process to allow the Conservation Commission to sign off on that, That's another level that I think could really also really slow down the building permit process in many cases. And to be able to say, like, for your average applicant, there is wetlands impacts or no, how do you, if they just say no, how do you really know that? Or, you know, there is, I think, a checkbox, and maybe Scott, I don't know if Scott's on here to answer that, but
Scott is,
I think
yeah.
there needs some clarity about what's really being asked for and what, you know, because I have full faith that the planning board site plan review and subdivision process, when those applications come, we do and should see the wetlands and have it. So if there's some specific application that's there's some sense that there was not, we didn't do the right job, the planning board did the right job, I'm not aware of that, so thanks.
Scott, June invoked your name. Did you want to comment on the building permit?
Yeah, for an example, 50 Pleasant Street, that lot is looking to be built on, and the builders as well as the property owners contacted us with regards to a wetlands of what they were defining as a wetlands on that property and where they'd be able to build. So the process that I take is I reach out to the DES and have their mapping folks take a look at what is there. And in this case, it's an intermittent stream, and they do have to meet the setbacks, but that's the only one that I've had come in front of me so far. But I will tell you, we do our due diligence in making sure that the property is looked at before any type of permit is issued. And if there's wetlands involved, I immediately reach out to DES mapping to have them give some guidance on what that property is.
And the Conservation Commission would like to have similar input on those wetland impacted developments. Not all building developments, but the wetland impacted ones.
I think that's a clear case of when the Conservation Commission should be included in the process to review the site, a specific review of the site.
So is the Conservation Commission asking for that to be added to the building permit process?
Only if there's a wetland permit also involved. If it's going to DES to ask for a wetland permit, then at that point, that should trigger, you know, that the Conservation Commission receive the relevant document.
I think that either you should have it, actually June's got her hand up, but or you should just tell this clerk to give you a copy, you know, town
But
clerk.
we need to know, it has to be an automatic thing. I can't be chasing all the time.
No, but just, you know, put it as a need to do, but.
June.
So I was just looking at the state DES wetlands, DES's wetlands section, and they have a guidance for processing wetland and shoreline permit applications, processing guide for city and town clerks. And it very clearly says that when those things come in, they're supposed to distribute it to various entities, including the Conservation Commission. And then from the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions, it says that you know, once they get that, they have 14 days to make a request to DES for more time to review it, is my understanding. So as long as those if somebody's applied for a wetlands permit application, as long as it gets to the Conservation Commission, then they have that authority, I believe, to reach out to DES and say you want some time to review it and that kind of thing. So that process should already be there.
So it sounds like if that's not happening, there's a gap in the dissemination from the town clerk's office.
Yeah, and I can't comment on that part, so.
So someone should follow up with Josie.
I would say
Kathy?
Kathy, yeah.
Can you follow up with Josie and find out either that we need to do something to enable a procedure, or she can just add that to her checklist?
Okay.
Good?
I'm okay.
I love it.
I like these discussions.
Yeah, when they get, especially when they come to an easy conclusion.
We have
Oh, Grace, yes, please.
Throw out that, I mean, I used to work for the Wetlands Bureau. Not all wetlands are mapped, just be aware.
Yeah, which also goes back to Scott's point. If they check no on the thing and then it's not mapped and nobody finds out, then that's the thing.
That's why I like to see a site-specific review. Boots on the ground.
Muck boots on the ground.
Mud boots.
Correspondence. I should have printed these out, but I didn't. We got 2 responses from the letter we wrote, both from Joyce Weston and from Suzanne Smith.
Okay. Yep.
Basically in support of our letter, and basically saying they will work to support that, and in conjunction with NHMA already, they both were aware and working on that. Any other correspondence, Kathy, that you received? All right, committee reports. Water and sewer, Marion?
No meeting since.
Neil, planning board.
March 15th, the Conservation Commission met. We had a busy meeting. We have state approval for the Pemmy Oxbow project for conservation easement, but we need to put in an application for a grant from the Park Service, and we have a little more work to do on that project, and hopefully June or July that grant will go in, or that grant application will go in. We have a very active trail group. They're doing a GIS analysis and scorecards on the trails, and making hard copy maps of new trails. There's a new trail up near Texas Hill Road and Plymouth Mountain. Ahern has a class at I believe it's a high school. They're mapping watersheds and wildlife habitats, making a connection to producing clean water, and the students are going to issue their reports April 19th at the Plymouth Regional High School auditorium for the public. They're working on a upgraded email site and website, and they're working on a new logo. They're working on getting a group together to build a kiosk at the Rand, Steve Rand's land, where they're going to have a new trail, and we already discussed the hot issue regarding the wetlands permits.
Bill, is there a list of trails in Plymouth?
Yeah, they have a map. They have maps. I think they're available downstairs.
Oh,
And
okay.
they've got new trails that they're building, and they're working with the students at the high school on water quality and trying to develop an information base. And they want to get a nonprofit number for GIS license. They want to have something called Pro.
ArcGIS Pro.
Yeah. And I guess what they have now isn't really helping them. Yeah.
Use the high schools.
Yeah, they need to do something with the town. Yeah, and they need to move up a little. So that's a little out of that's you guys, right?
I know probably more about it than
I Ted more than me.
Okay. Maybe you could help us.
I know about it. I was the license administrator for Plymouth State for many years, but I don't know how you would go about getting a non-university, because we're part of an agreement that spans the university system, so we essentially had ArcGIS Pro and all the associated tools included.
June, what are we using for GIS software in the planning office?
CAI.
We don't own any of the software. The town does not have a license. Joseph, our new assistant planner, has some GIS experience and downloaded QGIS, which is an open source free version. And he's been playing around with that a bit and doing some kind of combination of our parcel data, tax assessment data, and using that to answer a couple questions or thoughts that the planning board's had. But we don't have a full-blown GIS system at this time.
Okay.
Maybe it's an opportunity for the high school to work in partnership with the social science department at Plymouth State to work on a project, because they can get the license as part of the university. And if it's part of a project that they're working on, then they might be able to do something there.
Is pro necessary?
That's
we
what
know?
they.
That's a
that was
question
what
really
I
for
heard.
somebody that's more
Yeah.
of an expert than I am.
And even for town planner, or, you know.
I think so.
But if it is, there might be a way to negotiate with the university for one of their licenses through the, you know, the LSSA. You know, it might be a point
Can
to
we move
put on
forward
there.
on this?
Well, if we need it, I think it would be kind of.
I think you would probably want to find out what your needs are and talk to one of the geography professors that uses it to see if it's needed or not.
Mostly we're talking about connecting the high school with the university, is that?
Yeah, I mean, they could work on
High
it.
school you're talking about, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
I'm thinking more
we're
along
working
those.
with the students through Ina Ahern's class,
Okay.
and, you know, we're trying to make it a community thing.
Mhm.
And this is what I keep hearing, is they really need this. And Ina Ahern's really the expert on this.
I think what she's done, though, she's done quite a bit already using their high school license. So
Yeah.
I don't know what more they would actually need, but
We need to have her come in.
I think if we need it as a town.
Yeah, I don't know whether
Yeah, we'll keep talking to Joseph and see what he needs.
Thank you. Well, that was my report.
What about planning board?
That's me again.
It is, yeah.
They got your name on there, Zach.
Yeah, both are
You
names.
you
he's
didn't
an
know?
alternate.
Oh,
alternate.
okay.
I was in the
Oh, okay.
audience.
Well, all right. I just did Conservation Commission. Okay, Planning Board met on March 17th, and John Christ was elected chairman. Rebecca Hanson is vice chair. She wanted to step down a little. And Phil Lamoureux is elected recording secretary. The main topic was Mid-State's application at 26 to 38 Main Street, which used to be the community bank. And there were a number of concerns about you know, parking and flow of traffic, and how the parking lot up and back, I forgot the name of that street, but it used to come down through. It's actually a public way. It is a public way down. They have stairs to where
Yeah,
the
they
street
do.
used to be.
Right, right.
And I was told that they don't gate it off. The public can go through there, but you can't drive a car.
Right.
Yeah, there is some question about whether or not there's any documentation or easement or any legal obligation for them to maintain that.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I was told that night.
Yeah.
They had, the Mid-State had, it looked like their lawyer and all their people there, their top officials, were on Zoom. And the concern was the access for the American Legion building and how they get around the building, and, you know, it's, there's some questions there, but, and there was questions about after-hours parking for the establishment across the street. And so you know, it was my perception that Mid-State wants to be a good neighbor. So they're trying to iron out, the application was approved with conditions, and you know, I was concerned about the drainage system, but that was not included in the conditions. So they did get an approval with conditions. So I'm sure that they're going to move forward.
Campus Community Council?
I sent out a notice this past weekend to the roughly 10 or 12 people who were on the normal distribution list.
It's too bad.
The normal distribution list from previous years. We did get some response back. Well, most of the people responded back saying that the date was fine. So we're going with April 6th at 5 p.m. right here. We did get some feedback from one person that suggested that we need to do more in researching who might be interested in attending so that we can email them. I don't have any such additional list other than the ones that we sent out to. I asked Kathy if she had any others, and she indicated that she didn't have a ready list of any specifics. Right now, I'm just working with the distribution list that we've had in the past, and it will be posted on the town website tomorrow, I assume, as a meeting. But April 6th, 5 p.m. for all those who are interested in coming.
April 6th, 5 p.m. All right, capital improvement. We had our first meeting last, I guess, 2 weeks, a week and a half ago. I don't know. What was the date? On the 18th. We're meeting again this week. The primary goal that we're all sort of working towards there is to get a completed CIP by September, so it's ready for our budget cycle this year. June and Joseph have already started doing a lot of really good data collection work, you know, taking the stuff that Kathy had collected and then kind of synthesizing that. So I'm looking forward to, we have another meeting this week, and things are trucking along nicely there. LRPC.
We're having a commissioners meeting here at 6 o'clock.
31 minutes. Tick-tock. Parks and Rec?
We met on March 23rd. As Lisa had indicated, the primary topic of discussion was the flag policy. There were several other things discussed. None that I can recall were hugely significant. So Eleni Panagoulis was reelected chair, and there will be another meeting. Initially, there was a thought about having their next meeting in June, but because of school schedules and general questions about the weather in June, because they desired to have it outdoors, it was decided that it would be tabled for now and put on the agenda to announce sometime in July or August.
Great. Parking Committee, Mary Ann?
We haven't met for a few weeks. Just, I know we're still waiting for the insert, so.
I was going to say, if Alex was here, I'd ask him about the inserts.
Yeah,
but they
no,
haven't-
still waiting.
still
Should
haven't
be here
arrived.
soon, though. Exciting stuff.
All right.
Yeah.
It seems like they come next week, ever since last October.
This is true. It's been,
Economic Development Committee still
which
non-active.
I actually was hoping June would stay, because are we ever gonna restart economic development?
Yes, we are.
When?
When?
Soon.
Soon.
So you don't know.
Are you going to let us know?
In a week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Soon.
next week.
a week or so.
All right. Energy Commission?
So I hear we're going to be putting out an RFI or an RFP.
An RFQ.
Or an
I didn't hear
RFQ, yeah.
that.
But at least it's a very active community, commission, excuse me. And there's a lot of energy there, so.
Yes,
Oh, that's
sir,
kind of
is.
redundant, but yeah. So I think we'll be doing some good stuff.
Some really serious people there.
I like it. Advisory Budget Committee?
Nothing.
Nothing yet.
What about Scott? Has he got anything?
Here we have the
Scott
We already
already,
covered it.
he already said he didn't have anything. Well, we have a thing. Joe, we have a personnel item for you that's public.
Is everything okay with June? Oh,
Probably heard it from all the department. I guess
I hope I didn't get her upset. She doesn't feel good.
I've been struggling with my health, but right at the moment, it's my mechanic, and that's a pretty important one. And I had a guy for 4 months, young kid, and he only lives 10 minutes from where we are. And he kept telling me how he wasn't going nowhere, and he was happy, and I was out sick for a little bit, and I come back, and he'd given his notice. Well, long story short, where he used to work, they got a hold of him and made him an offer he couldn't refuse. And he's traveling from here to Lebanon every day.
Oof.
That's where he was. And so to travel that distance, and the pay difference must be pretty substantial. What he said was they give him more structured hours, and well, I told him what he wanted to hear and offered him more money. And, I've had that job in the paper for over 2 weeks now, not a single bite. So it's been on Indeed, it's been in a couple of the papers, and I've also got it on the town website. So like on Indeed, it can tell you, and so it's up as far as responses, so people open it and look at it, but they're not responding. So if the job pays, it will pay in July $25 an hour, which isn't enough for that position. That's one reason why I'm not getting bites. Plus, most towns don't make that employee plow snow on top of that. So that's also another reason why I'm struggling. And I've had this struggle. It's one of the reasons why my last mechanic got done. Trying to keep up with all that and then do the winter services. So in my new budget coming up that I'm building, I'm going to suggest another full-time employee so I can relieve that mechanic of those duties. I might have a clause in there if someone's out sick and he has the ability to step in and work with us, fine, but he won't necessarily have to have a CDL. He could run a 1 ton. We have a couple of plow routes that have the 1 tons. But so why I'm coming to you tonight is because they opened that site and then they're not responding. There's nothing there that draws them in for that position. And my pay scale's already set for that job.
Do you know what the salary difference is between the job being accepted in Lebanon?
No, he didn't tell me.
Okay.
But
So can I assume that
But he's not making that right now. I think he's making like 23, somewhere in there. But he knew that in July he was going to get another raise, and he still wasn't enough. And honestly, I don't think it was all about. I think he's going to get more money, but he actually stayed with us through the winter. And most people don't understand that winter service until they've tackled it. It's not and he's a young kid. But anybody with a young family, they don't want to get pulled away during the holidays and stuff. You're married to that job. You don't get to say whether you go home for Christmas or Thanksgiving or New Year's, or if it snows, so we're struggling with a lot of it. But so I'm looking to do a sign-on bonus.
Joe, how much would it cost you to hire a mechanic with a tool truck to come in and do repairs and maintenance for you? How much would that cost you?
Well, anytime that we've had that kind of service, you have to pay for the travel. So on top of the service, you pay it for the travel time. And like if you come from Concord and back, it can be upwards of $500 for that travel. $250, $300 each way.
And they charge how much an hour? It's over 100, isn't it?
$100. So if they're only there an hour, it could cost you $600-700.
What are you going to do now that you're losing this guy?
That's why I'm here. I'm trying to pull a sign-on bonus to draw someone in and see if I can't hold somebody for at least
what if
a
the
year.
Does he have to have his own tools? Does he have his own tool chest?
No, we're pretty much set up. I mean, they have that option. I tell them straight up that I'd prefer they didn't, because I don't want to be responsible for their tools if they come up missing. So that becomes that's his responsibility. But we've had the opportunity to supply the shop with the basics and anything that we can't handle in-house. Like a lot of the newer stuff is emissions and electronics which are huge money. We can't fund that kind of stuff at the shop. So any of that big stuff we ship out.
CAT or
We're talking like brakes and tires and doing prepping stuff to go for
welding,
inspection and welding and all the basics and some hydraulic knowledge and
exhaust systems, ball joints, things like that.
yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't have a way of drawing them in.
There's a huge gap between $25 an hour and what you got to pay that guy with a tool truck.
Yeah.
The other question is like how often would you, if you were paying the guy with a tool truck, how often would they be here with the tool truck?
Well, I'm.
It may be worth it, who knows, but
It's not in our world because
Expensive.
there's a difference. Like I can jack a truck up and take the tire off a big truck tire and take it down to Northeast Tire, and it cost me the travel time, maybe 3 hours with one of my guys, and it's $125 to have them fix it and come back and put it on a machine. So if I call one of these other companies that has a truck that drives up to my place, he's going to charge me that $125, and it's probably going to be a minimum of $300, $400, depending on.
For timeliness purposes, I think having a conversation about long-term, the position makes sense. Short-term, though, we need to make a decision on whether or not we do a hiring bonus.
So
I think you're going to have to.
in this thing, I don't know if you've got it, but
yeah, we have it right.
Not to cut you off, Joe, but
So Indeed, I've got over $8,000 in Indeed. So the sign-on is $1,500 to $2,000, and you incorporate that in their pay. But my personnel, the line item is like $3,000, and I'm already over $10,000 this year because I just can't keep help. So we have to keep
So
throwing
Joe, I
these
think,
out.
No
Joe, I think we're
disagreement at all.
entirely in agreement, and I'd like to have a motion, or make a motion to allow you to put a $2,000 sign-on bonus for this position.
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. All set.
Get it done. So I skipped the Board of Selectmen goals discussion intentionally because of timing. We should review it next time, but it's in your packet, just to refamiliarize yourself with what was on our plate. We do have one non-public. It's timely, I believe.
Yeah, and we should
Scott's here.
see if we have any public comments from
Yes.
our public.
Any public comments, Frank?
Public.
Nope.
Any public comments online? All right, seeing none.
I'd like to make a motion that we go in a non-public in accordance with RSA 91A, colon 3, Roman numeral 2, C, reputation.
Second.
I'm not even sure which one got it, but I don't care. Roll call vote?
Aye.
Aye. You have to-
Aye.
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 All ayes.